Imagine a scenario. You're booked in back-to-back meetings, helping the team members with everything they need to keep them going, and barely any time to do your work. When you finally do get a moment for your own work, often in the evenings or the weekends, you find this great sense of relief as you start to check things off your list that have been sitting there for quite some time. The problem is that you never seem to get ahead long enough to be able to do the strategic work that you know you need to do for your role. That to-do list is just never ending. And in fact, you might have even gotten feedback that you need to improve your strategic thinking if you want to get promoted. Maybe you don't know where to start, or maybe you simply just don't have enough time to get to that strategic work that you know you need to do. This is a common problem that I see when clients start our program. It's all too easy to get stuck in that doer role and not transition yourself into the thinker role. So if you can relate to anything in this story, you're going to want to stay tuned for this entire episode because I'm going to talk about a subtle but powerful mindset shift that can be holding you back from achieving all that you want and more. I'm Jill Avey, a career success coach, and this is SisterSmart Leadership, the show that explores how women can rise from director to vice president and beyond by fully leaning into their feminine energy as their biggest advantage. Let's get you one step closer to the recognition and promotion you deserve. The problem here is that we can often hide behind our to-do list because it feels good to check things off. It gives us a sense of accomplishment. It's actually a dopamine rush, and it prevents us from having to further examine the thought patterns that are keeping us stuck where we are. Instead, we can get caught in self-sabotaging thoughts like, I don't have what it takes, or it's not important for my voice to be heard, or who am I anyway? I can't see myself doing as more than I do today. See, our inner emotional life is like a governor for our success. And we need to work through our mindset limitations to avoid getting stuck behind outdated ways of thinking. Our growth gets stunted and our potential gets cut off unless we work to expand our mindset into new territory. The mental game is every bit as important as being good at your technical skills when it comes to moving up the ladder. And it gets more important the higher you go. The good news is that it doesn't have to be a mystery how to get there. And I'm going to take you through 3 areas to focus on that can be life-changing. The first area is self-belief. This is all housed in our subconscious level of our mind, which is, think of an iceberg and you only see a little bit at the top and there's the 95% of it that's under the waterline. That's our subconscious mind. So the conscious mind would be above the waterline and the subconscious is below. We're operating in that subconscious mind 95% of our time. The thing about the subconscious is it's very old and it's formed when you're a kid, but also in adult life. It's heavily influenced by your family, your culture, media, friends, and life experiences. And the thing is it runs on autopilot. So it's very hard to find these limiting beliefs because you've been living with them for a very long time and you don't know they're even operating because it's all happening in that subconscious level. So if they're hard to find and they're very subtle, how do we work with these limiting beliefs and how do we even find them? So if these limiting beliefs are all operating below the system, the first step is going to be to find them, even identify what your limiting beliefs are. One of the things that we can do is just start to tune in and think about, okay, what's operating here? What belief patterns do I have? What are the things that really define how I see the world? And that's really what our belief system is. And we have beliefs about everything. And so you start to examine them as you go and start to notice, oh, there's a belief here that's informing how I'm operating here. And what I find more helpful is to do a discovery exercise. And we have an exercise where we do this in the SisterSmart program. And I'm going to link to that in the show notes for you so that you can do that. So sometimes we're just examining common limiting beliefs and seeing if that's something that you resonate with can be really helpful because now you're able to identify them. And then once we can identify that we have a limiting belief, and you're going to have a lot of them, you can have easily, 50 to 100 limiting beliefs, but then you identify that you have that. And then the next step would be to flip it. So if it's a limiting belief, we want to make it an unlimiting belief. So how do we do that? How do we take a belief that's been a limitation and we turn it into something that's actually helping boost us and helping drive us? What we want to do is just take that belief and just flip it around. So perhaps you have a limiting belief that you're never going to be successful. That could be something that started from way back. Even though you've had a lot of success already in your career, you may still be harboring this limiting belief from your family of origin. And this was particularly a common belief when somebody has risen up through social class and income levels. And so we can be harboring a limiting belief that I can't be successful or I'll never be successful. It's like an anchor dragging us back because it will continually drag us back to what maybe a family member said, maybe one of your parents said, something like that when you were a kid, and you adopted this belief and took it on. It doesn't matter where it came from, really. Sometimes that's helpful to identify where these things came from because you can say, that's not me anymore. Here's how I've changed. And we can do an affirmation around this limiting belief. So in that case, you just flip it and you create an I am statement around it. So it would be, I am successful. I have had great success in the past and I will have even more in the future. That's a beautiful affirmation. And you say that affirmation over and over again. And what it does is it recreates a new neural pathway in your mind, in that subconscious, with this new message. And so what we want to do is we're not trying to stop the belief and start a new one because our brain doesn't really work that way. I like to think of neural pathways as wagon trails. Think of when the pioneers crossed the United States, there are wagon trails that got so deeply rutted because so many people use them that you can still see them today, hundreds of years later. Those trails actually started as game trails, and then people started walking on them, and then they started taking the wagons on them. And so they got more and more and more established. And so that's what we want to do is we want to establish more and more and more the positive way of thinking so that it becomes a super highway through your brain. What happens when we do that is that old limiting belief starts to atrophy and those neural pathways will start to diminish. You can see in an MRI that they lose their myelin sheath. And those wagon trails have diminished and they've filled in and the dirt has fallen in and grass has grown over them and they're hard to see now. And that's what we want to do with these limiting beliefs. So we want to de-emphasize the limiting belief and we want to emphasize the new positive one. And so we want to be really careful about how we talk to ourselves and what are the things that we're saying to ourselves. And in our Sisters in Leadership program, we actually have an exercise where we take a day and monitor our self-talk and hear the things that we're saying to ourselves. And then we work to change that. It's a really powerful exercise that has changed a lot of people's outlook on this self-talk piece and how they want to be supporting themselves and encouraging themselves. And so the second area that we want to talk about here when we're talking about shifting our mindset is facing your imposter. So what is an imposter? An imposter is that part of you that gives voice to self-doubt and the saboteurs that hold you back. And this is driven by feelings of not enough, making sure that you have to get everything right, that everything has to go your way, you have to control things. This is driven by what we call these saboteurs. We do a lot of work with saboteurs in our program because it's really important to work with our saboteurs. Everybody has saboteurs. Everybody has an imposter. It's a matter of when these things come into play. So they all come out when we're doing something that is pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone. What they are is they're our mind, our emotional systems, protective mechanism to keep our ego safe. And they're brilliant at doing this. They're formed in childhood. And they're formed as a result of when we're little, we don't have a lot of tools to make sense of the world. Our imposter is formed, our saboteurs are formed to help us understand and keep ourselves safe. So it's important not to fight these because they're kind of like a porcupine quill where if you fight them, it just digs in deeper. And that's not how we want to work with them. We have a whole half-day workshop in our program where we work on becoming friends with our imposter and working together with it. And we also do something called the PQ Boot Camp, which is another way to work with our saboteurs. So we do a lot of work in the program. So for today, I just want you to become aware of what your imposter is, become aware of when you hear that voice of self-doubt. The imposter is really, it's the self-doubt. It's also, you might feel it physically. I feel it as a pit in my stomach. And I know when I feel that, it's a little bit of a nauseous feeling. And when I feel that nauseous feeling, it's a signal to me of, oh, I'm stretching out into something new. This is a little scary for me. And this is the reaction that I'm having. And I used to shrink back And I used to go do something else, or I would sabotage myself in so many different ways. Trust me, there's a lot of different ways we can do that. But I would pull back in some way and not be my best self. And now I know how to work with it. Welcome that imposter in of, oh, hi, I see you. Here you are again. Thanks for coming. Thanks for trying to keep me safe. But I'm going to go ahead and do this thing anyhow. I'm going to feel you as butterflies rather as something that I feel needs to stop me. And so that's how we can work with these feelings, and we can go ahead and do the things that we want to do and be that person, that successful person we want to be, by making that mindset shift and making friends with that imposter and those saboteurs. I have a client that has a really great example of this. When we first started working together, she wasn't so secure in her role, and she was a senior manager, and she wanted to get promoted to a director. When we first started talking, she also had a desire to get promoted to VP, she had told me. And then as we started working more and getting to know each other better, she reached a point where her imposter kicked in, and she said, no, I don't think I want to be that VP anymore. I think I just want to be a director, and that's fine. I want to be able to focus on my kids and my family. And so she was shrinking back into that mom role. And not that there's anything wrong with a mom role, but for her, that was a comfort zone. And so I was completely supportive of that, because everybody gets to go to whatever level they want to, and whatever level is going to be fulfilling for them. And so I was a little surprised when just about 5 or 6 months later, I had mentioned that she was just wanting to stick to the director role. And she said, now I've changed my mind about that, because she'd done a lot of this work with her imposter and her saboteurs, and they were no longer holding her back. And she knew that she could go all the way for the VP role and still be the mom that she wanted to be, and still be the wife that she wanted to be. And then it wasn't an either or thing, and she could really see the way. And that leads us to our third area, which is emotional fortitude. As leaders, we need a lot of this. And by this, being comfortable feeling your feelings, even the really difficult ones, not ruminating or worrying. You've got to be able to let stuff go and not hang on to it. You can't berate yourself or hang on to past mistakes. And you have to develop the ability to remain calm no matter what is happening around you. In our program, we work on building our emotional fortitude by learning of emotional intelligence. And we work on identifying the feelings and the associated emotions with them really only last for 90 seconds unless we hang on to them. And so good emotional balance will allow us to let them wash through us. In our program, we have a framework that gives you 5 steps on how to process your emotions in a healthy way. So that process is to acknowledge the emotion. So first of all, label the emotion and feel it in your body. Often the emotions come with a bodily sensation. And so the more we can feel it in our body, the better we can connect with that emotion quickly and easily. The second step is to accept it. Just accept that you're having this emotion. That can be harder than it sounds. It sounds like a no-brainer, but sometimes we really want to push away, especially the uncomfortable emotions. It's our human nature to push those away and to resist them. Or even the good emotions, it's our human nature to want to cling to them and hang on to them and want to keep them around. So if we can just accept that we're having it, then we can have compassion to ourselves with the hard emotions, have compassion that we're feeling this emotion. You know, this human life is just not always easy. And so having that compassion for ourselves is a very important piece of this, because that really helps us to be able to let go of the emotion and not have any of that feelings of berating ourselves or kicking ourselves for any piece of this. And then fourth is to create a little distance from that emotion. Recognize that you are not your thoughts and try to see it from a little distance. So sometimes we can feel really embroiled in our emotions and feel that even our mind is the same thing as our thinking, and that we are our thoughts. And we're not. We're actually very different from our thoughts. Our thoughts are the things that run through our mind, but our mind is very different from that thinking. And so if you maybe meditate on that a little bit and see where your thoughts end and where you begin, it's really interesting to explore that. And so number 5 is that curiosity. We can lean into it rather than push away the feeling and see what it has to say to us. So go ahead and feel it and see what wisdom is in that emotion. For example, let's say you're feeling anger in the middle of a meeting. we can run through these 5 steps pretty quickly and easily, where you're acknowledging, anger is present here. I'm not anger. I'm not this thing, but I'm feeling anger, or anger is present. That's the way I like to say it, is, anger's here. And then I can distance myself from it a little bit, see that this is just something that's occurring, and that curiosity to really lean into it and say, okay, what does that have for me to learn from? And anger is usually just a signal that our boundaries are being crossed, or that something's really important to us. We feel passionate about it. And so then that can really help us to figure out, where do I go from here? Another thing that we want to do to develop our emotional fortitude is to let go of worry. This is really important because often we carry a tremendous amount of worry, and women can carry a lot of worry feeling like it's almost an obligation for them. And that often worry is conflated with care or love or concern. And so what we want to do is let go of that connection, because those are very different things. I had one client that was really successful in shifting away from worry by shifting from worry to hope. And that helped her to have something else to take its place. Again, we're talking about upregulating a neural pathway and downregulating another one. So she was able to focus on that hope and let the worry go. And that was a really major shift for her, because staying optimistic is our next thing. And that's really important, that we stay optimistic and not stay in habits of worry. So how can we stay out of pessimistic thinking traps? This is another framework that we use in our program, and this comes from positive psychology. So the first pessimistic thinking trap is mind reading. And that is where we think that we know what's in other people's minds, and we don't. We have no idea what's in other people's minds. So that one is really important to stay out of. Me is the second pessimistic thinking trap. This is where we think it's all about me, and that I'm the sole cause of this. I'm the one totally responsible to fix it. Those kinds of things can really be a burden and drag us down. The third pessimistic thinking trap is called them. And this is where we attribute everything to everyone else. And this can lead us to feel hopeless and like we don't have a lot of control or agency in a situation. Our fourth pessimistic thinking trap is called catastrophizing. And that's where we can get, and we've all been there, we can get on and on and on, spun out about how bad something can get or how bad it is. And you just have to stop. You've got to stop yourself when you catch yourself doing that, because it really leads to a bad place. And most of the time, none of that's going to happen. And so we want to be careful with that one. And then the fifth one is called helplessness. And this can be a feeling of, just as it says, that there's just no hope and there's nothing I can do, that really feeling stuck here. And so those are 5 thinking traps that we work with and we learn about in the program so that we can really stay in that optimistic mindset. So we've talked about the importance of mindset when it comes to being recognized as a leader in order to secure that promotion and have the influence you need to be effective. In each episode, I like to leave you with 3 shifts that you can make today. So the first one that I'd like to leave you with is to stop and think about when you hear that voice of self-doubt. Everybody has a voice of self-doubt, and whose voice is that? Sometimes we can identify that this might be the voice of my mom or a teacher or my dad or somebody. And so often that can be a real helpful cue to start to reverse that. And you can start to just say, actually, I think that person really wants the best for me. And I'm going to change that voice and I'm going to change it into something positive because it's not helping me. And I really want to have the support that I need. So the second shift is I would like you to ask yourself, why not you? So this is an important mindset shift that we can really find power in, is thinking about, aren't you the type of person who we need to lead in this world? Aren't you the kind of person that has the integrity and cares about the humans and has the interest of people? And, you'll work with the team and all of the positive things that women bring to leadership. Aren't you that kind of person? And don't we need more people like you to lead? And number 3, if you were to lead at higher levels, who would you do it for? So it would probably be more than just you. Maybe it's somebody that you want to be a role model for. Maybe you'd like to show the power of what feminine leadership can do. That was something that really inspired me in my career. Maybe you want to be a good role model for women who are coming up under you, or for your daughter or your niece. So think about those 3 shifts and please pick one today and start on that right away. I'd love to hear from you. What are you taking from today's episode? Is there a limiting belief that you can identify with? If you're watching this on YouTube, let us know in the comments which one you are going to flip so you can inspire us. And be sure to check out the show notes to download the Find Your Limiting Beliefs exercise that I mentioned earlier. This will help you to find those hidden beliefs that are down below the surface that aren't part of your conscious quite yet. I have also linked our Future Self meditation track, which is an episode that is on YouTube only. And this will help you envision that new version of yourself that you're seeking to create. So if you want to dive deeper into women's leadership and how to move up in your career, subscribe either on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. I'm on a mission to help more women get into leadership and stay there. And if that's aligned with you, I'd love for you to be part of this community and tune into more episodes on SisterSmart leadership that will support you in becoming the leader that you want to be. If you're ready to fully lean into your feminine leadership and get promoted from director to vice president and beyond, hit that subscribe button so you'll get all the episodes to come. And check out the recommended video here to see how women are rising up without playing by the old rules that built these male-dominated industries and systems.